Hey guys, this is Adam Blackstar, and today is the 1 year anniversary of when I became an atheist. And so I just wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about how my life has changed since becoming an atheist. Now, for such a radical transition, you would probably expect that there's been a lot of radical changes. There has been some changes, some good, some bad. Um, and before I go any further, I just want to say that I did shoot another video back in February detailing the entire deconversion process, what that was like, what was going on through my mind, the hows and the whys. So please go watch that video if you have not, and let me know what you think. It might put a little more context on this video as well. But being an atheist for 1 year, I remember thinking a year ago, or there somewhere thereabout, wondering if I would be sitting here now looking back on when I first became an atheist. Uh, and if somewhere along the way I would have found, wondering if I would have found that answer that would make me a believer again. So, sitting here a year from becoming an atheist, once again as a believer, and looking back and thinking how ridiculous I was for ever becoming an atheist. And that hasn't happened. I have not found that answer that would make me a believer again, or that would even make me want to believe again. Uh, I have actually found a great deal of peace since becoming an atheist that I never knew before. I have peace with myself. I'm no longer making such ridiculous demands on myself to be a person who I just can't be, and who I never really detected that there was anyone helping me to be. I prayed very hard and I tried very hard, and I could never be anybody other than just who I am. And I know that some are able to change themselves. I know that some go into Christianity and they change. I've actually witnessed that. And they will list that as evidence that God is real. But we have different personalities, and some people just have more willpower. They just have more, they're able to pursue things with a greater intensity. Uh, and frankly, they just maybe have a greater desire to change something about themselves. None of that is evidence for God. Um, but for me, I've always had a kind of a mild personality. I've never been given to like addictions or anything like that. I was never anyone who needed to be saved from the fire or saved by fire or however the expression goes. I was always a good kid. I never really rebelled against my parents. And so there was never any like great story to be told. Um, this great salvation experience or anything that others had where they said, I was this and now I'm this. I just never had that. But the interesting thing is, I have a great story now, a great born again story. I just don't have a born again into religion story. I have a story where I was born again, so to speak, uh, into atheism. And I think it's no less remarkable of a story when I go back and I think about that process. And again, I talked about it in length in the other video that I mentioned. It's an incredible story, I feel. And I've seen so many other incredible stories by people on YouTube who have deconverted from Christianity or any religion, who have realized that they are atheists. And I find it fascinating just just how much how much correlation there is in these stories. I think the greatest change for me is simply that my mind is free now. I don't have to reject things just because they challenge my indoctrination. I realized that all of those beliefs that I had, not only were the beliefs irrational, but the reason for believing them was irrational. You don't believe things just because someone tells you that they're true. If you're a 20-year-old adult and somebody comes up and tries to convince you that Santa Claus is real, you're not going to accept that. You're going to ask for evidence. You're not going to believe them just because they told you. Likewise, if you're an adult and someone comes up and starts telling you about Thor, you're not going to accept that either. Not without demanding some evidence. It's the same story for Yahweh or any other God. If someone brings you a Bible and says everything that you need to know, all the truth is in here, and you weren't raised religious, and you are not predisposed to believe that in any way, you're going to wonder, well, what makes that book any different than any other book? Why should I take that book seriously? And the reason that Christians do is because those ideas were planted in their heads most of the time before they were old enough to have the critical thinking skills to really examine them, to really test the veracity. It's the same reason why children believe in Santa Claus. The 20-year-old doesn't believe in Santa Claus, but the 5-year-old will. Because you have the parents who they trust and who they love telling them. And because they're not old enough yet to have that, to be a skeptic when it comes to ideas like that. That's why little children will believe in things like magic and the Easter Bunny and all these fantastic ideas. But that's not a rational way to arrive at what's true. And we know that. So when I put that aside, and I recognize that the only way to arrive at truth is to put all of these claims and all of these ideas to test them with the same method and to never accept anything at face value. Well, it gives me this freedom that I didn't have before. That now I can go read and I can explore and I can tentatively accept something that a short time later I might decide is not true. I can change my mind. And I'm not making any commitments. The only commitment I'm making is to be honest. And so I have a great deal of peace now, just because I'm free to be honest. I don't have to discard things that challenge those ideas that were planted in my mind. The most difficult thing for me, I think, has been my relationship with my family, because they are all believers. They were born into religion just as I was. And they just don't seem to have the same curiosity that I have always had. They don't seem to think about things like I do. I've never told my parents that I'm an atheist. I thought about it, and I thought by now probably the subject would have been broached, but it just never has been. In fact, I have reached the conclusion that I probably will never tell them this. Uh, they know that something's changed. They know that I am interested in things that I wasn't interested in before. They know I believe in things like I believe uh, in the evidence for evolution. They know that I have that I entertain thoughts that they think are dangerous, but they don't want to talk to me about these things. They don't want to know why. They don't want to consider that maybe I'm right. So just from those conversations that seem to die before they ever get started, I've discerned that they wouldn't want to know that I'm an atheist. I think that they just want to know or believe that I'm okay. They just want to believe that everything's okay with me, that I'm a believer, that I'm heaven bound, and they don't want to worry about me. So that's okay. Uh, it's difficult sometimes, but I work around it. I have friends who know I'm an atheist, and they just, we're still friends. They tolerate the fact that I'm an atheist, but they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to know really why. They don't want to consider that maybe they could be wrong about anything. I don't mind if they talk to me about religion. I'm respectful. I'm trying to be helpful where I can. But they pretty much shut me off when I start talking about anything that challenges them, even when it's not intended to really challenge them. So that has isolated me somewhat. It makes me feel isolated because I don't have anyone. I don't have any friends or family who I can just talk to the way that I'm talking right now. It gets a little bit lonely sometimes. And I would say that that is the worst part of atheism. My life, just in general, is relatively the same as it's always been. There were a few theists who told me that God was going to send uh, catastrophes my way just to let me know that I had gone down the wrong path. Nothing like that has happened. 2016 has been it's been a bad year in many respects. All the celebrities dying and everything, but it hasn't really been a bad year for me. It's been about an average year. I've had good stuff, bad stuff. There's been actually been a few things. I wouldn't call them tragedies necessarily, but they were bad things. But those things, they resolve themselves without a single prayer being whispered from me. So I don't see anything, there's been nothing that would make me think, well, God's trying to talk to me. And I just wonder why are people so insistent that this would be God's way of talking to me? I even explained that after I stopped believing, I prayed. And I prayed that God would just talk to me, just talk to me in a way that I could understand and that I could believe and that I could know that it was the right way to go. And I begged and I said, I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to be wrong. And if this is right, this is what I want to do, and this is where I want to invest myself in. Well, I didn't hear anything. There was nothing. And I just wonder about these people who are like, well, God's going to send disaster your way. It's like, well, why would God choose that way to talk to me? Somebody who's sitting here like, all I need to do is have a conversation with you. All I need to do is hear your voice. And says nothing, but will send a disaster my way instead. That's like going to your father and saying, Dad, I'm worried that you don't love me, and I want you to love me, but I need to know that you do. And so Dad responds by saying, well, all right, son, tell you what I'll do. I'll take all your toys and I'll burn them, and then I'll kill your sister, and then maybe you'll understand that I love you. Maybe then you'll understand that I'm there. That's just insane. That is just so insane. I don't know any other way to put it. It's so irrational. That people continue to believe this. And they've created these mechanisms that they can continue to hold on to this faith, despite the very obvious evidence, I would say, that it doesn't work. I mean, we learn to interpret everyday phenomenon as God because that's the only thing that we can hold on to and confuse for evidence of his existence. We don't have God here to talk to. We have thoughts in our mind. The still small voice, as the Bible says. How convenient. There's no one to talk to, but we can have that conversation with ourselves and say that it's God. God's not going to come down and tell us we're doing something wrong, but he's going to send a hurricane, so we can just interpret all that bad stuff as God. If that's the way that God communicates, how is anyone supposed to know what the hell God is talking about? You can't. I mean, sure, there's some minister, there's Pat Robertson who'll tell you or something, but it becomes a matter of personal interpretation. And the Bible says that God is not the author of confusion. Yet that system, that whole thing where we're all going around listening for voices in our head and making interpretations of natural phenomena, that is nothing but confusing. So I am thrilled to be done with that. I'm thrilled to be living in the real world, in reality. There's nothing more freeing that I've ever experienced than that right there. And just the fact that I no longer have to look at other people with such a judgmental mindset. I can criticize belief systems. I can criticize irrationality. But as far as people themselves, I am no longer having to imagine that everyone who believes different than me is going to be tortured for eternity. It's kind of a hard thing to wrap your mind around, really. You're my friend, I love you, but you don't believe the right thing, so you're one day going to be tortured for eternity while I'm in heaven. Great knowing you. I don't have to think about that anymore. I don't have to tell people that they're unnatural. My politics have gone from the far right more to the left. And I actually wouldn't call myself a Democrat, certainly not a Republican. I guess I'd call myself an independent. But I no longer feel that we should repress people with legislation. I see all human beings as being equal. And if we're not hurting each other, then we should leave each other alone. So I realized that I actually had notes and an outline for what I wanted to talk about, but I have not paid any attention to it. So what we have here is a how long? Almost 22-minute stream of consciousness. In the dark, no less. But that's kind of what it's been like, a year of being an atheist. And I don't see myself ever going back. Not unless there's some evidence that would suggest that that the existence of gods is even a realistic proposal. I want to talk in future videos about the difference in faith and belief, because Christians often conflate the two. I want to talk about what is a God? What is the definition of God? Some people say, I don't know if they say they don't necessarily believe in the Bible or any of our religions, but they do believe there's a God. But what is a God specifically? Is that something that we can define? Or is that a concept that is born in the mind of human beings? So there's going to be more videos examining all the thoughts that go through my mind since becoming an atheist. And I would love it if you would subscribe and follow me on Twitter at Adam Blackstar if you would like to. I spend a lot of time on there actually debating with theists, so that's a lot of fun. I'm also on Facebook at Adam Blackstar, so look me up if you want to. I don't have a lot of friends on Facebook simply because most of my real life people I know in real life off the internet are not interested in anything that I would say that is not Christian, conservative, and all of the little things that go with that. So feel free to look me up, and thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to talking to you again.